Hey everyone, welcome back to Trucking with Scar. I know that it's a little bit of a darker picture for you today, but I'm sitting at about uh, midnight 25 and I'm driving through Coltstown, Pennsylvania. Uh, if you like my videos, why don't you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button? Maybe throw a comment down below. Let me know some of the things you'd like to hear, or some of your thoughts on the things I have to say. For today's video, we're going to do a little bit of a recap and quite a bit of griping. Because right now, I am really hating the DOT. That's right, the DOT. Them, the regulations that they put on truckers have forced me to drive at a time that I really don't want to have to drive. And tonight, well, more accurately, in the morning, I'll be hitting road conditions that I really don't want to have to deal with. And if it wasn't for the 70-hour clock, which I'll get to in a minute for those that don't know what the 70-hour clock is, uh, but because of my 70-hour clock being low and I'm running on recap hours, it's forcing me to drive at times I don't want to. I was only able to drive uh, about 3 hours yesterday morning before my hours ran out. Well, more accurately, before I had to stop at a truck stop because there wasn't another truck stop that I could make it to before my hours would run out. That left me with about an hour and 15 minutes on my good old 70-hour clock. And that also caused me to stop about 7 o'clock in the morning, which is a great time for trying to find truck parking because that's when a lot of people are leaving the truck stops. But then I had to try to stay awake so that I could be able to get up and drive again tonight. Well, my clock doesn't recap my hours until midnight central. And, I slept about 8 hours uh, during my about 20 hours of downtime. Got up and started investigating the wonderful road conditions that happen at this time of year in the Northeast. And for those of you who don't know, it's winter. And winter in the Northeast means that white, wet stuff, it becomes slick stuff in different conditions. Well, when I was researching what the road conditions were doing, I found out that for rather large sections of the route that I'm needing to drive through, there's snow coming in this tonight. It was a gorgeous sunny day whenever I had to stop. And during the times that I was awake and the sun was up, it was really, really nice out. Now, you have to understand, right now I'm comparing, I slept in, what was that? Uh, Maryland. No, not Maryland. Wasn't New Hampshire. Anyways, it was one of them northern states that I stopped in last night or early yesterday morning. But I had come from Maine and I was seeing temperatures that were up in Maine that never got above the teens. So seeing temperatures in the upper 20s and very low 30s was nice, especially considering there wasn't any wind. Sun was out, would have been perfect, perfect for driving most of the way to where this load delivers. But now I've had it out early for this load delivery by about 3 hours, hoping that I can make it to the delivery before the roads get too bad, and then also drive slow enough whenever the roads are bad. But it won't matter how slow I drive, I'll still be able to make my delivery on time. Because if I don't make my delivery today, that means I'm not getting paid for a day of being down. And that's right, I didn't get paid for the time I was down waiting on my hours to recap. Because the government, in all their wisdom, has decided that in an 8-day period, I'm only allowed to drive, or no, correction, I'm only allowed to be on duty. That's anything I have to do: inspect my truck, get fuel, get the truck washed, uh, deal with shippers and receivers. I'm only allowed to do that for 70 hours in an 8-day period. When that clock runs out, I'm required to be stopped, parked and stopped. Now I can run it right up to the very last minute, but if I go over my time by even 1 second, it's a violation. And that's a ticket. Well, that might not sound too bad, but that violation goes up against my driving record. I get too many of those violations, and it causes it to be difficult for me to get a job driving a truck. And for those of you who don't know, I make significantly more money now than what I ever did working in wilderness therapy or any form of mental health. But I'm going just as much as I ever was working mental health. And the way I figure it, if I'm going to be out here, I might as well be making money. So I don't like being stopped any more than I absolutely have to. And I don't particularly want to lose my way of life just because of the fact I drove 1 minute more than what the government says I'm allowed to drive, or I worked 1 minute more than what the government says I'm allowed to work. Well, that irritates me. Because, I grew up, my dad was a firefighter, lots of uncles were cops. I was a volunteer firefighter. There was no such thing as too tired to work. There was no such thing as you've worked too many hours. Heck, most of the firefighters and most of the police I know work 2 jobs or more. For the longest time, I've always worked 2 jobs until I got to where I was working wilderness therapy. Whenever I was Whenever I left wilderness therapy to go work your more typical 8 to 5 jobs, I was working all day, a lot of times pulling overtime, and then also going to school at night. That occupied more than 80 hours a week and a 7-day work week. I understand why they have these regulations. They think it's all about making it safer for me, the driver, out here on the road. And I understand some of them. Like the 8-hour clock I have to worry about. The 8 hour clock is a clock that runs anytime the truck is moving, and it states that if I drive for 8 consecutive hours, before the end of that 8 consecutive hours, I have to stop and take a 30-minute break. And that 30-minute break, I can agree with. If you've worked 8 hours, you're getting fatigued. 30 minutes of not working is a good thing. Kind of like the lunch breaks anybody else takes in your 8 to 5 jobs. For those that work a typical 8 hour workday. Well, then I've got my 11-hour clock, and here recently, and I'm hoping that our dear old President Biden and his new California and New York appointees to the governing bodies that make regulations for us truckers don't change. But here recently, they made it to where our 11-hour clock was just driving time. That's just time that the wheels are rolling. They said right now, in a single day, I can keep my wheels rolling for up to 11 hours in a day. I can get behind that. I can understand why after driving 11 hours, I'm then required to take a 10-hour break. Those are good conditions, saying that once I've driven 11 hours, I have to take 10 hours off. During that time, I've got to take care of me. And I don't know if you could hear that, but that was my wonderful little machine that tells me when I can sleep and when I can drive and when I can go do just about anything, telling me I've got 14 minutes left before I run out of time and that's on my 70-hour clock. I've been driving for just a touch over an hour right now. But I made a mistake and forgot about and didn't think about the time zones whenever I realized that I'm driving into bad weather. And I started driving 15 minutes earlier than I should have. Well, after the after all those clocks, there's still the 14-hour clock I have to deal with, which I'm going to be fighting today. Because the 14-hour clock says that from the time I start rolling my wheels and I start my first clock, I've got a grand whopping 14 hours to complete my day in. Whether I'm on duty, off duty, whatever, 14 hours. And I can understand the 14-hour day rule. That one actually makes sense to me too. What I don't understand and what I don't, well, I understand it. It's a bunch of people that don't drive trucks trying to make rules and regulations for what a trucker can and can't do, and have never done the job. And if they have done the job, they're so disconnected from what it's like out here, they don't remember what it's like to be told you have to stop regardless of where you're at by a certain time. You know, it ain't right. If I want to work 80 hours, 70 hours a week, let's go ahead and, well, 77 hours a week. If I was to work 11 hours a day every day that I'm out here, I should be allowed to. But I also understand there's a lot of idiots that aren't willing to recognize when they need to stop. And rules and regulations are typically made because somebody somewhere messed up or somebody somewhere scared a rule maker. But it's absolutely asinine that because the government says I have to stop, I now have to chance driving in road conditions in order to be able to get my job done. I know that nobody of any importance in the government is going to hear this message. But I sure do appreciate you listening on in and seeing what's going on out here in my world. I'll get through this. It's just another irritation. But I hope you have yourselves a wonderful day. Kiss and hug your loved ones. And remember, keep her between the mayo and the mustard and keep your shiny side up. This is Trucker Scar. Sure would appreciate you go ahead and hit that like, hit that subscribe, and come trucking with Scar. We'll catch you on the flip side.